Okay guys, so continuing on with the new features in Logic 10.4, let's now check out this Smart Project Tempo. Now, this is a big one, there's a lot to look at here. Okay. Now I have previously very briefly shown you the file tempo edit box, but not in any depth. This file tempo edit box or window is part of the Smart Tempo, this new feature in Logic. Okay, now before we start, there's something very important, alright, that you need to get your head around, particularly for beginners, and that is this. Smart Tempo, this new technology in Logic, is not Flex, right? Not the same thing. Here I have a piece of bass that I played. I played it freestyle with no metronome, and Logic mapped the tempo of my playing as I speed up. Have a listen with the metronome. Right? There is no flex applied to this piece of audio. The piece of audio is playing exactly at the tempo that I played it at. Tempo changes have been put in to the bars to make the bar lines line up with the audio. No flex is being used. Now I'm going to drag a copy of this across here. Right? Here the tempo is fixed at 100 beats per minute. If I play this piece of audio with the metronome, it's completely out because this piece of audio is a copy of that. It speeds up. Here there are no tempo changes above it. There's a fixed tempo of 100, so it's completely out. Right, so check this out. I have an audio track selected and highlighted, but I click on the background to deselect all audio. Now look up at the region parameter box here. It says audio defaults. Look down here and you'll see flex and follow. It should be set to off by default. Right. Now I'm going to switch on flex for this track. Both the regions get these lines on them. I select this region, go up to the parameter box and turn its flex and follow off. There's no flex on this. This one, I set it to flex and follow align bars. Right? Now, this new Smart Tempo technology is nothing to do with flex. With Smart Tempo technology, the tempo of the project is changed so that the grid fits the audio. With flex, the audio is moved to fit the grid. So now I've applied flex to this bit of speeded up bass playing. It will now play consistently at the fixed tempo of 100 beats per minute. Right? So very important to get to understand this. Smart Tempo is not flex. With Smart Tempo, the grid is moved to fit the audio. With flex, the audio is moved to fit the grid. Okay? Very important you get that down, right? Okay, so let's move on now and see how it all works. Okay, so how does it all work? Well, let's do a little bit of housekeeping first. Your Logic probably looks like this. So in the display area up here, drop the arrow down and switch it to custom. Now we have a nice big display. In the middle there we see our project tempo. Mine is set to 100 beats per minute. Underneath is a drop down and we can choose from here the Smart Tempo mode for Logic. Okay. Next thing, bring in the global tracks. With the global tracks button there, you should see the tempo track. If you don't see that, right click anywhere in the grey background here and click the word tempo. You will now see the tempo track. My project is set to 100 beats per minute at the moment, so the tempo line is at 100 running all the way across the project. Right? Okay. So, Project Smart Tempo. We drop the list down here, and there are two types of Project Tempo mode, or Smart Tempo mode. One is called Keep, and one is called Adapt. This third one, Auto, simply, if you choose Auto, then Logic will choose whether to use Keep or Adapt behaviour based on what's happening. But the two actual modes are Keep and Adapt. Right, now let's check it out for recording. First thing you have to understand is that there are tempo references. An audio region is a tempo reference, a drummer region is a tempo reference, and a MIDI region is a tempo reference, and a metronome is a tempo reference. Right? Now, if Smart Tempo is in Keep, then it doesn't matter where you record. Logic will never adapt the tempo of the project to your playing. Right? I could remember these regions are tempo references, so I could move the playhead across to here. There are no regions, no tempo references. The only other tempo reference that I can have is the metronome, so I'll turn that off. Now I can begin recording at this point with no tempo references at all. I've got a bass, all right, and I'll record some bass. Here we go. And Logic completely ignores the tempo of my playing. Right, there was no region there that I was playing along to providing a tempo reference. There was no metronome providing a tempo reference. But Logic ignores the tempo of my playing because we're in Keep. It just keeps the project tempo. Right? Okay, that's Keep. Next, we've got Adapt, the other one. Now, Adapt. Okay, notice something now. Over the area where the regions are, the tempo line is now blue. From the end of the last region, the tempo line is orange. And so what Logic is telling you with that is that, look, here there are tempo references. So the tempo line is blue. From this point onwards, the line is orange. And that means Logic is telling you, well, look, from this point onwards, there are no regions providing tempo reference. So if you place the playhead anywhere in this orange area and record, as long as you don't employ the metronome, the only other tempo source, I will adapt the tempo of the project to your playing. So I'll put the playhead into this orange area, and notice as I do that and move it forward, it becomes blue behind the line, and that simply means that if I position it, say, at bar 13, Logic is saying, right, the playhead's at bar 13, so if you record from this point, onwards from there, I will adapt the tempo of your playing, provided you don't employ the metronome, because there are no other sources of tempo available. So let's do it. I'm going to record freestyle over this, no metronome. Here we go. And Logic does it. It analyses the audio as I'm recording. You saw the lines being put in. It has analysed the audio. It's placed the bright orange lines on the downbeats, starting on the first downbeat. The downbeats are what Logic figures are the first beat of each bar of my playing. And it snapped the first downbeat to the nearest bar line, which was bar 14. And it's put the tempo changes in so the tempo conforms to the playing. If we now bring in the metronome and listen. Right, it's in sync. All right. Because the tempo has been adapted to the playing. The playing is exactly as I played it. The tempo has been adjusted so the grid lines, the bar lines, line up with the playing. Let's get rid of that. Alrighty, But if I position the playhead anywhere in the orange area and I use the metronome, now I'm using a tempo reference. Even if I play at a completely different tempo to the metronome, it will not adjust the tempo to my playing because there's now a tempo reference, the metronome. Here we go. Nothing happens because there was a tempo reference present. Right? Now there's one other variation on this in the orange area, which is Logic telling you that there are no tempo references anywhere in the tracks. So the only possible tempo reference you can have is the metronome. We've seen that if I record without the metronome, it will map the tempo of my playing. If I use the metronome, I then have a tempo reference. It does not map the tempo of my playing. There's one last thing. If I do not use the metronome, but I do use the count-in to cue me up to come in on whatever bar, then you must come in playing at the tempo of the count-in for at least the first couple of bars. Well, the first bar at least, preferably 2 bars. That gives Logic a chance to sync up to your playing, after which you can then change the tempo. If you do not come in at the tempo of the metronome, even though of the count-in, even though there's no metronome and you're free to record at any tempo and Logic should map your tempo, if you don't come in at the tempo of the count-in, Logic gets confused and it can't get in sync straight away. So let me show you that. I'm going to come in free playing without the metronome but with a count-in, but when I come in I'm going to come into a completely different tempo than the count-in. And Logic does all the analysis as usual, puts the first downbeat on the nearest bar line, but have a listen with the metronome. It takes a couple of bars to get in sync. It's out for the first couple of bars. It eventually gets in sync. And in this case, when it finally synced up, the downbeats are on the click. But sometimes it will do it so the clicks are on the upbeat. But it always takes a couple of bars after bar 2. It gets in sync usually. Sometimes it won't. But if you don't come in at the speed of the count-in, it's always going to be out for the first couple of bars. Right, I'll get rid of that. Now I'll do it again. But this time I'm going to attempt to come in as near as I can at the speed of the count-in. I'll play at that speed for a couple of bars, then I'll go off at a different tempo. Here we go. And this time it should have done it. A little bit of an error there. Right, here we go. Let's have a listen. Should have done it. If I came in at the right tempo for that count-in, it should have done it. Right? So that's what the rule kind of thing. That's how it works. You can record over the orange area where there are no tempo references in the form of regions. You can record completely freeform with as long as you don't use a metronome. Logic will map your playing to the project tempo will be mapped to your playing. But if you use a count-in, you must come in at the speed of the count-in for at least 1 bar, preferably 2, before you change tempo. Otherwise Logic gets confused in the first couple of bars. And if you record with the metronome, then Logic will ignore your tempo even though the area that you're recording in is orange, right? Alrighty, now that leaves this area here where there are regions, right? Well, these regions are providing a tempo source. They're active, they're on, right? So let me turn them down so I don't hear them, but they are active. But there's no metronome, right? So I'm now going to play freeform over this section. These regions are active, providing tempo information, and I'm going to attempt to record at my own tempo. Let's see what happens. Logic ignores the tempo of my playing because these active regions are providing tempo information, right? Okay, let's turn them all back up. Boom, boom, boom. Now let's mute them, right? So now these regions which provide tempo information are muted. The blue line is still over the top of them. The tempo line above them is still blue, because that is just saying, well, look, there is regions present across here, but they're now muted. And now if I try and record over them with no metronome, they're muted, they're not providing tempo information. Logic does map the tempo, analyses the audio, puts the downbeats in, snaps the first downbeat to the nearest bar line, and puts all the tempo changes in to match the audio, and it's perfect. Right? Okay, and that's because the regions here potentially providing tempo information were muted. Okay. Now I'm going to delete this now. These tempo changes may stay there, but hang on, may. Okay, they've gone. I just don't want to get into what happens when you delete or move regions around. We're going to come to that. We're just looking at what happens now when you record, right? Okay. Okay, so these regions were muted, therefore they couldn't provide tempo information. I wasn't using a metronome, so I was able to record tempo information to match my playing here, even though I was playing over the top of some regions. And that's the same if you don't mute the regions but mute the tracks. Same thing happens. No metronome. These are muted but on the track this time. And Logic does it. Snaps the downbeat to the first downbeat to the nearest bar. Metronome on, have a listen. Right, bing bang bong, right? Okay, that's how that works. So yeah, that's recording with Adapt. Okay, I can record anywhere in the orange area as long as I don't use the metronome. If I do use the metronome, it will ignore the tempo of my playing. If I don't use the metronome, it will record the tempo changes with my playing. If I use the counting, I must come in at the tempo of the counting for Logic to be able to sync up properly. If I record over any regions which provide tempo information, even without the metronome, if these regions are active, Logic will just keep with the tempo. It will not adapt to my tempo because these regions are providing tempo information. But if they're turned off, either muted as regions or the tracks are muted, they no longer provide tempo information. I can then freely record over that section and Logic will adapt to my tempo as long as the metronome isn't active. Okay? Alrighty. Yeah. So that's how it works. And really, that's the basics you need to know. If you're a beginner, you're probably wondering, well, what possible use is this? How could I use it? We'll get to that. But now the next thing is auto. Now auto, I personally wouldn't recommend using it at all. With keep, you know what you're going to get. With adapt, you know what you're going to get. with auto, you often don't get what you expect. But look, basically, when you're recording, auto always chooses adapt. It always behaves like adapt. So go into auto. I'm going to record over the orange bit without metronome or tempo, or counting rather. No metronome, no counting. There's no regions providing information. Here we go. And it does it because there was nothing there providing tempo. Right, so it behaves the same as adapt. The only thing is, when I delete this, because we're in auto, it might keep the tempo there. No, it didn't this time. Okay. If I record with the metronome, it will ignore my tempo changes, the same as adapt. Completely ignores it, the same as adapt. I'm playing completely out of time with the metronome, but there's a tempo source, the metronome, right? So it ignores it. And then finally, the same thing as we saw in adapt is true with the counting. If you have the counting on, but no metronome, you must come in at the tempo of the counting. At least for one bar, to give Logic a chance to sync up, right? So it's the same as adapt. For recording in an orange area. Now, what about recording over regions, where they're providing tempo information, right? No metronome. But I'll turn the tracks down with the regions on. They're active, but they're just turned down so they don't distract me. I record free. Here we go. No metronome. These are active, but they're just turned down so they're not distracting me. Here we go. Just like in adapt, Logic ignores the tempo of my playing because these regions are active. I'm providing tempo information. No metronome, right? Okay. But now, let's turn them all back up. Let's mute them. And now again, it will behave like adapt. No metronome. These are muted, so they're not providing tempo information. I'll record freeform. Here we go. Logic does it because there was no tempo reference from these regions. Snaps the first downbeat to the nearest bar, listen to it with the metronome, bing bang bonk. Everything's hunky-dory except for one thing. If I now, because we're in auto now, right? So if I go to delete this region, it might leave this tempo behind. Yes, it has. Now, look, don't think about that for the moment. We're just looking at what happens when you record, not when you delete and move things. We'll come to that, right? So let me just get rid of these nodes here. Hoover those up. You go away. Tempo's back to 100, right? Okay. So look, when you're in auto for recording, it behaves exactly the same as adapt, right? So there we go. That's how it works. Now, you might be thinking, if you're a beginner to this, what on earth is the point of this? What use is it? Well, I'll show you one use. Let's say this is the end of my song. Bass and drums, right? Playing along at 100 beats per minute, fixed tempo. And this is the end of the song. Now, this is the drums, there's the bass, but imagine there's also guitar tracks. You've built a whole composition, and this is the end of it. And it's coming to the end like this, right? And it just stops. Now, one thing that you can do with this that's really cool is it's really easy to create slowing down endings. Okay? So, look, as I said, pardon me, imagine there was guitars with this and everything. You've built the composition, and this is the end. But you want to end with it slowing down. So you do it like this. The best thing to keep time is the bass, because the bass keeps time. That's what it does, right? So I create another track. This is the original bass track. I've got this other track, right? And I'm going to go into record, no metronome. These regions are active. I'm going to play along with the bass, which will keep the tempo. And then when I get to this point, I'll be playing bass freeform, and I'll do the slowing down freeform with no metronome. Right, here we go. Ready? Wait a minute. Let's put it back to adapt. Right, here we go. Here we go. You know, that kind of slowing down ending. Make sure this snap is set to absolute value. Trim that back to the end of the previous bit of bass, and let's have a listen with the metronome. Here we go. Alrighty, now have a look in the editor, file tempo editor. Logic's put the downbeats in. Right, this is the bit that I dragged the rest, trimmed the rest in, so that's the bit that's hidden. This is what's remaining from this point on. The downbeats there, playing away until this final bass note. And if you look, it hasn't put that final note on a bar line. That's because this downbeat marker isn't on that final bass note. Now sometimes that happens. Just move it across, right on the money with that final bass note, and watch above in the blue region. That final bass note will snap up to bar 13 like that. Okay, it's just moving that final note up because the downbeats are going to line up with the bar lines, right? So now it's a little bit tighter now. Let's have a listen. That doesn't always happen, but it can happen with the last note sometimes. Okay, I've created the slowing down ending with the bass. Now I create another drum region, shorten it until so it ends at the end just before the final bass note there, like this. And then one more drum region, and this one we drag it right back so it's just a quarter beat long, right? And that's going to provide us with our final drum hit on that bass note. Right, now for it to have a crash we need to put a fill into this bit. Right, so just turn up the fill and we get a little fill here at the end, and then a crash on the final note there with that bass. So you make an ending like that. And just a tip here, turn off fills. Sometimes it's very hard to get a fill at the end here with that bum 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 ending kind of thing. So one way to do it, and I've shown this before in other tutorials, just chop the last bar of the drumming off. Right. Turn the fills off for this final section of drumming before the last little quarter beat bit of drumming where the crash is. Right. Chop, isolate this last bar of drumming. Then you can use the fills on it freely without affecting the previous bit of drumming. Right. And now we get a more bum 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 fill. So there's somewhere, there's an example of where it's really useful. It's just such a snip to do slowing down endings. It's just brilliant. Okay. Right, another thing we can do, let's get rid of this editor here. Get rid of this editor, go away. Another thing we can do, and again, remember I'm in Adapt for doing all this. I don't recommend using auto, right? What about if you want to do a speeding up bit in the middle of a song? Well, you build your song up to the point where you want to do the speed up. You know, you're going to be probably working to the drummer track or MIDI drums you've created, so you can have a fixed tempo. But at this point, let's say we're at some middle section of the song. I've got the guitars and everything else, right? But I want to speed up here, so I build my song to the point. So I build my song to the point here, and at this point, I want to speed up. No metronome. These regions are providing the tempo information up to the point here, after which I'm free to play freestyle, and from then on I'll speed up. To change the tempo, speeding up, after which the new section of the song can come in at the faster tempo. Here we go. This is how you do it. Right. Here we go. Boom, like that. It maps the tempo. Listen with the metronome. Now, one thing to note, because you're playing along to this piece of audio, which is providing timing, tempo, when you get to this bit, it's a bit like playing without the metronome, but with the counting. You can't come in at the end of a piece where this region is providing the tempo information up to this point, after which you're playing free. You can't come basting in at this point playing a completely different tempo. You've got to play at the same tempo and then change. Now I just snap this bit back like that, and I've got my increase in tempo bit here. I'll put some drums over it like that. This bit can be snapped back. There we go, let's hear it. Like that, right? Now, there's a few little nodes left over because I trimmed this back. These nodes relate to the very end of the piece of audio tempo. I trim that back, and I need to get rid of that. So just, boom, come on, get rid of that node. And this, I can, come on, I want you to come in like that. There we go. So it just ends on that tempo of the last bit of playing, right? Okay, so now I've done my speed up bit. I'll just put some more drums in and continue playing the bass. I'll use this track now to play the bass from this point onwards, right? Yeah. Doesn't matter about the metronome now because I've got the drums to play to. They're providing the tempo reference. Here we go. But I must have a count in. Here we go. Etc. And I've just done the speeding up bit here, and then I continue with the song at the new tempo there. All done, right? Right, so it's really good for putting tempo changes in parts of the song. Record everything, get everything up to the point you want the tempo change, put in the tempo change, add the drums to it, and then continue from the end of that tempo change with the new tempo of the song, right? Good stuff, all good stuff, right? Lovely jubbly. Right, so there you go. Let's turn the bass down. Yeah, that's how it works. Now, I'm not going to bother showing you all that stuff in auto. Look, my advice is use keyboard or adapt, right? Auto, I can't see the point of it because you're never sure what you're going to get, right? In keep, you know that the project tempo will be kept, whether it's constant at a tempo that never changes or you've got tempo changes in there. But whatever you do, that project tempo will be kept. You know that's going to happen, whether you're playing over an empty bit or whether you're playing over other regions. In adapt, you know what's going to happen. If you play over other regions, the tempo will be kept because they're providing the tempo. If you play over an orange bit, any empty bit, if you use the metronome, the tempo will be kept. If you don't use the metronome, it'll conform to your playing. You know what's going to happen. So I don't recommend this auto. I don't really see the point of it. To me, it's just too problematic. Oh, and there's the police, helpfully contributing to my video. Okay, so yeah, so I don't recommend using auto, okay? When you're recording, it pretty much always behaves as adapt. It does. But the problem with auto is that once you finish recording, when you delete something, it might do a different behaviour in leaving nodes behind for the tempo. Things like that. That's where you're not sure what's going to happen. But when you're recording, auto always behaves as adapt. So you might as well just use adapt. Right? Okay. That's how all that works. So the next thing is, what happens when you're moving regions around? We're in adapt. We move this region with tempo information above it. It carries the tempo information over with the region. Okay, now there is an issue here. Look, you can see there's an issue happening. This is not perfect. This last bit of tempo information is just this little bit here that ends on the end of a region, on the end of the region. And that is not an actual node. It's just, there are some issues with this. Now I can knock out that, but there's still that hollow node there, which you can't delete. Because this is a handle. Right? It's not an actual node. It's such a pain. And I'm now, oh, there we go. So we're ending with the tempo just continuing now. At the tempo for the last bit. But again, now if I move this, watch, move it, tempo moves with it. This time it doesn't leave that little bit behind because I trimmed it off the end. It's a pain that happens at the end of a piece of playing where there's a silent bit at the end of your playing where you stopped playing. It drops the tempo back down. And then that gets left behind when you move it. It's just ridiculous, but that's what happens. So the bottom line is this. If it's in adapt and you move a region, it moves the tempo information with it. But after you've moved it once, if you move it again, well, now it's behaving completely differently again. Move it, the tempo moves with it, and now it leaves a copy behind. Let's do that again. Maybe it's a forward motion thing. I can't figure this out. I figure it's bugged. I move it forward once in adapt. It doesn't leave the tempo behind, which it would do in leave. In keep, I move this forward. It's always going to leave its tempo behind. But in adapt, move it forward. It carries its tempo with it. Move it forward again. It carries it with it. Move it forward again, it carries it with it. Now, move it forward, carries the tempo with it. Move it forward, carries the tempo with it. Move it forward, carries the tempo with it. Move it back, carries the tempo with it. Move it back, now it leaves some tempo behind. This is flawed. This is a bug. This shouldn't be happening. Why would it randomly choose to leave tempo behind and carry a copy of its tempo over on the second copy working backwards, the second time I moved it backwards? It's just nonsense. It's complete balls. I move it forward. It carries the tempo. I move it forward. Carries the tempo. Move it forward. Carries the tempo. Move it forward. Carries the tempo. Move it back once. Carries the tempo. Move it back twice. Leaves a copy of the tempo. Move it back again, leaves another copy of the tempo. There's no reason for that. There's no logic behind that. It's to me, that is broke. Right. When I'm in adapt, It should always carry the tempo with it. It should never leave a copy of the tempo behind. It doesn't do that when you keep moving it forward, right? It doesn't. Keeps on carrying its tempo with it, but as soon as you move it back, first time it carries the tempo as it should, second time it leaves a copy, next time it leaves a copy. That is broke. I'm going to say it's broke. It's a bug, because that is bull. That shouldn't be happening, right? Okay. But that's the state of play. Next thing, we're in adapt still. I move this over the other area where there's regions. Now, these other regions here, these have all got, this audio region's got a fixed tempo of 100. Move it over that. The line is red, warning that you're moving tempo with the region. Let go. Boom. It adapts to the tempo of the piece being moved. Right? Move this one under that. It adapts to the tempo of the one being moved. That's a rule you can rely on. When it's an adapt, if you move one bit of audio with tempo information different to the tempo information over another piece of audio, it adapts and updates to the piece you moved, whether you move one piece over the top of another or one piece under another. It always adapts the tempo to the piece of audio being moved. And that's it. That's all you need to know. This other thing is it should, when you move the region, it just should carry the tempo with it. It does it correctly working forwards, but for some reason when I move it back, the second time it's leaving tempo behind. I'm saying that's a bug. That's wrong. Unless someone could explain any possible logical reason for that. Okay, so look, that's it. An auto, I wouldn't even go there. Again, it's pointless, this auto. It's completely useless. All it does is confuse. It's crap. I'm going to say it. Apple, get rid of it. It's a waste of bloody time. Because I don't need it. I know what's going to happen in a keep. I can use keep. If I want adapt, I'll choose adapt. I don't want Logic to desperately try to work it out for me and get it wrong all the time. Because if you put it in auto, now all hell breaks loose. I move this forward. It carries the tempo with it, the same as adapt. Move it forward. It carries the tempo like adapt. Move it forward. It carries the tempo like adapt. Move it back. It carries the tempo. Second time, it leaves it behind, the same as adapt. So it's behaving like adapt when I move it around empty areas. Right? Move it again, it's going to leave another copy, no doubt. Yeah, right. But if I if I now move this over another region, Logic chooses the keep behaviour and leaves the tempo behind there, keeping the tempo where it was there and keeping the tempo here for this region and what was there before. So if I know I want that to happen, if I've got this piece of audio here and I think, well, I want to move this over here, I do not want the tempo to, I want the tempo to stay there. I want to move this piece over this other area. I don't want the tempo to come with it. Well, choose bloody keep. And you know what will happen. It will leave the tempo behind and it won't change the tempo of anything you put it over the top of. Whereas in auto, yeah, it'll do that, but you don't know it's going to do that. It does it, but yeah. Also in auto, put this under that one. It ignores it. It does keep. It keeps the tempo of that and keeps the tempo of where this came from. So I really don't see the point of auto. I really don't. It serves absolutely no purpose. Just choose keep or choose adapt, right? Now, last thing, importing audio. I've got an amen break here, right? This has already had its tempo analysed. We're in keep. I drag it in and drop it. Nothing happens because we're in keep. The project tempo does not adapt to this piece of audio. Switch it to adapt. Bring this beat in. The tempo adapts to the beat. Right? Easy peasy. Easy peasy. You don't need to think about it. If you use keep, you bring audio in, the project tempo will be kept wherever you drop it. If you use adapt, you bring the piece of audio in. If it hasn't been previously analysed, it is analysed on the fly as you drop it, and the tempo is changed to match it. Simple. Okay, that's all you need to know about that. All right. Yeah, so good stuff. But really, this auto, it's a waste of time. And the second thing is, there's obviously a problem with this. There's a bug in Adapt. When I move this, it should just keep moving the tempo with it. And now look, now I've moved it forward. It's left the tempo behind on the second time I've dragged it, which it never did before. I mean, you saw that with your own eyes, right? Now, is that because I previously dropped the amen break here? You know, when it starts doing things that responding to things that you cannot physically see, then it should not be in the program. I move it once. It carries the tempo with it. I move it again. It leaves a copy behind. Now, before when we did it, you saw every time I moved it forward, it kept carrying its tempo. It never left a copy behind, dragging it forward. It only left a copy behind when I dragged it forward several times, then dragged it back. Now it's leaving a copy behind the first time I drag it back, and it's leaving a copy behind the second time I drag it forward. So I don't know. I really do not know what Apple are doing here. But there it is. There's something broke here. There is definitely something broke. I mean, we already know that there's, in the file tempo edit, they've confirmed that these two commands are broken and that therefore there's problems with this. I'm saying this is another problem. Look, behavior should be consistent in a program, not random. Okay, all right. And if this is now doing something different, which it clearly is, move it the first time, it moves its information tempo wise, moves the tempo. Move it the second time, it now leaves a copy behind. If that's because earlier I dragged the amen break into this area here somewhere, but I deleted it. The tempo information that it put in was it was taken out. So if that's what's causing this now to leave copies behind, that's wrong. There's nothing visually telling me that. So that is a bug. I'm saying it, right? It's crap. Apple, get it fixed, right? Okay. So there you go. That's it. Now, one last thing. One thing that this Smart Tempo is absolutely brilliant for is working with multitracks. Check this out. New project. Don't close. New project. Make an audio track with no input. Boom. Let's make this bigger. Right, now you know what it's like working with multitrack stems. Let's bring some in. I got those multitrack stems from that Daisy Daisy song that I was mixing in other tutorials. Bam, drop them into the project media. Now you know what it's like working with stems. We drag them into our project. I'm going to, and Logic refuses to scroll forward. Thank you for that, Logic. Brilliant. Okay, look, I have to manually drop them back here and scroll forward myself. Wow, brilliant. And now it's messed up the order of all the files here in the area. It's now back to, they're all now muddled up, not 1, 2, 3 working down. Right, well, thank you. I'll put it back now, but you know, it shouldn't do that. Okay. Drag them in. I'm going to drop them at bar 5. Bam. Create new tracks, one for each stem. Bam. Now, I have already imported these once, so they've been analysed, right? But I'm not going to import the tempo information. This is what normally happens. You bring your multi-track stems into the project. This first dummy track can now go. And there's the music. This is a band playing freestyle, not to a click, right? With all the subtleties and nuances of the timing that they're playing to. Now let me just get all these and lower these ones down so we just hear mostly drums. Let's have a listen. Brilliant. Now you can just mix, right? Okay. But the thing about working with these multi-track stems is that you never have the bar lines across the top of the project lining up with the bars of the music. But now with this smart tempo, you can do it. Use the kick track because the kick keeps time. Double click, open it in the file tempo editor. Right, now zoom in a bit. And then this white box, you can drag it along the file overview to zoom in, to go to a place in the file you want. Go right to the front. Look at the downbeats, the bright orange, and check with the metronome that it's put the downbeats in the right place, so that there's a downbeat, an orange downbeat line on the first kick drum of the first beat of the first bar of the verse, because this is intro, the first two bars, right? So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Bar 2. Yeah, it's done it. It's put. This is the first bar of the proper playing after the 2 bars of intro. It's put the downbeat there. Now we're going to adapt the project tempo, currently set to the default of 120. We're going to adapt the project tempo to the downbeats of the kick and only the kick. And in the process of doing that, it will snap the first downbeat of the kick track to the nearest bar line, which will be bar 5. So this piece of kick audio will be moved this way, so that downbeat is on bar 5. Here we go. Bomb. And now look, the project tempo has been mapped to the tempo of the kick. So now all the bar lines in our project line up with the bars of the music. Now the last thing to do is we need to get all of these lined up with the kick stem, right? So place the playhead over the beginning of the kick stem, which ensures that when you zoom it stays fairly well centered, right? Grab all these other stems, bring them up like that, and snap them as near as you can to the start of that kick region. Now zoom in again just to double check, you see, because look, the more you zoom in, it's not quite there, right? And I bet there is a command to snap this to that, but I don't know it. Okay, we've zoomed as far in as we can go now, and we just, there we go, snap those exactly there, right? Are they or are they slightly behind? They look a little bit behind. Yeah, till the line is, there we go. Right, and now the other stems are in sync with the kick, and the kick has been analysed and provided all the tempo information, so the bar lines now line up with the bars of the multi-track playing. Right, now, okay, it's starting at bar 5, but I know that if I go forward 1, 2 bars, I'm now on the first kick after the intro. Let's bring the metronome in, have a listen with the metronome. Yeah, it's brilliant, because now the bar lines of our project line up with the bars of the music, which makes working so much easier. Now it's quite easy if we want to add any MIDI stuff to this. Look, what I'll do is I'll add a new track, instrument track, put it up to top, and on here I'm just going to put a simple synthesizer, classics, basic analog polysynth. Zoom in. There's the beginning. Bar 1 of intro, bar 2 of intro. That is the first beat of the bar of the proper playing. I put in a MIDI region. Easy to do, right? Because I know this bar line is the beginning of the first bit of the proper drumming and the rest of the band playing. The first 2 bars here are the intro, right? Then in here I can put some MIDI notes. I'm going to use the brush tool in 16ths. copy that over to the next bar, and we know these bar lines line up with the bars of the music. Let's have a listen. Let's cycle around that. If I want to, I can move this up. Put in a couple of little dips or something like that. And then we, oh, come on. Yeah, so it's so easy now to put MIDI stuff in because the bar lines are lining up with the music, but the music has never been affected. It's still playing at its natural tempo. The other thing that's really cool about getting this the grid lined up to the music is if you're using effects. If I want to put an echo on the vocal here, right, I don't have to, let's put a delay on there. If I didn't have the bar lines lined up with the bars of the music, I'd have to search around, not in I'd have to use milliseconds, right, to try and get the right. How do you turn that off? There's a way of doing it. How do I turn off the? I don't use this delay much. How the bloody hell do I turn off this? So I'm just using milliseconds and not timings. Oh, here we are, tempo sync. Right. Yeah, I'd have to faff around. If these bar lines of the grid were not lining up with the bars of the music, I'd have to faff around searching for the correct millisecond timing to get the echo to repeat in time with the music. But because the bar lines are now lining up with the bars of the music, bam, I just set my delay to eighths. And I know those eighth echoes are going to be in time with the music, because the bar lines are lining up with the bars of the music. Yeah, I can use quarters, whatever. Or I can just have a little echo at the end. You know what I mean? And it'll be in time with the music because the grid lines up with the music. It's genius, I tell you. So there you go. That's this new Smart Project Tempo. Yes, I am saying that there are problems. One, use keep or adapt. Forget auto. It's a complete and utter waste of time. Secondly, there's clearly some bugs with moving regions around in adapt, because there's some randomness as to whether or not it leaves behind a copy of its own tempo information. Right? That's obviously a problem. Okay, but generally speaking, in keep, you move any audio around, it always leaves the tempo behind. Move another piece of audio under a piece of audio with different timing, it keeps the timing of the audio that was there before you move the new piece there. Move this across here, it keeps the timing of that. Move this across here, in keep, it keeps the timing of that. In adapt, move this one across, it adapts to the timing of the moved piece. Move this across, it adapts to the timing of the new piece. So it works as you expect, except for this business of dragging it. It carries its tempo over the first time. Now it's leaving them behind, whereas before we saw it, it wouldn't leave them behind as we moved it forward. It only left the tempo behind when we started moving it backwards. So, you know, there's some issues with that, right? But that's how it all works, right? That's how it all works. Now, there's one last thing. You can go here to Smart Tempo Project Settings. Again, this is a bit of a waste of time. What's the point of this? I mean, why? What possible usefulness is there for me to go here and go, oh yeah, I think I'll set the default Smart Tempo settings for my project I'm about to work on to keep or to adapt. Why? Or even the completely useless auto. What is the point of that when I'm working, I can just go up here and go, let's switch it to keep for the bit I'm doing now. Let's switch it to adapt for the bit I'm doing now. What? There's no point. This is completely pointless, right? And one thing to note, that when you open this up, there's a separate section here for the default flex and follow settings. That's nothing to do with this smart tempo. Just happens to be on the same panel, right? Okay. Right, so there you go. That is how it all works. And as usual at this point, I say, are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here? Right? Apple, fix a couple of things and we're good to go. Get it done, right? But this is absolute genius. It really is. To be able to record the tempo of what you're playing is just so brilliant. It allows you to do so many cool things. I mean, one thing you could do, which I haven't showed, is you could put it into record. You could have a count in, because you know roughly the tempo you want to record at, and you could record your guitar all the way through, but as you play you're going to be making very subtle changes of tempo. Then you build your drums and everything else around it, and you'll end up with a track based around an acoustic guitar where the tempo isn't rigid and robotic, which gives it extra life, extra realism, you know, whatever you want to call it, right? It can do that. We've seen how great it is for working with multitracks. It's great for doing slowing down endings or for doing speeding up sections of songs. It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, there you go. That is this new smart. Well, it says Smart Tempo Project Settings, but it's Smart Project Tempo, right? I hope that's useful, and I'll see you for the next one.